It is 12:15. I'll give you one last chance to record down that sketch form, please, or code. So find it once we start. You are in the session with Dr. Terry Scott around escalating behavior, effective responses to maximize the probability of success. So I will take this moment to stop sharing my screen and let Dr. Terry Scott introduce himself.
Okay, good, I believe, afternoon where you are. I am currently in California. I'm in Southern California where it's supposed to be 118 today. So happy to be indoors and talking with all of you. The topic of this presentation is going to be students whose behaviors tend to escalate. So little things become big things. We're not necessarily talking about full-blown tantrums, although that's part of what escalation is. What I'd like to do is talk you through the phases of escalation and what each of them mean and what we should be doing. We'll spend some time doing that first off. And then we'll spend the second part of this looking at videos of kids escalating and talking about what strategies would be most effective for those types of escalation. And they'll be, I think, fairly mild escalations, just to make the point about what typically might happen in a classroom. So to start with, I want to give acknowledgement to Jeff Colvin, my friend from the University of Oregon, excuse me, who really is the first person that kind of drafted all of these phases part out. And he and I have a book on escalating behavior, but he's really the one that developed the first part of this that I want to talk to you about. So it's that cycle of acting out that we'll be looking at. So think of the cycle from no problems to problems back to no problems as having 7 phases. Calm, phase 1, is where everything's great. There is no prediction that you will escalate in any way right now. So calm is where we all are right now. We're just able to do our day and do what's going on and not have problems. Trigger is something happened. So someone said something, somebody did something. I can see something coming that's not to my liking or scary. And if we can't break it at the trigger will get bigger and it becomes agitation. As this graph goes up, there are more problems. So agitation begins to have problems that are really escalating bigger and bigger. And if we can't break this at agitation, it hits acceleration where it grows really fast. And this is where it gets dangerous. So we would like to, number one, prevent this thing from ever getting started. But once it does get started, we want to think about strategies that would break it as early as possible. So we'll be talking about strategies at the trigger and agitation phases. But once we get past agitation into acceleration and peak, which isn't so much a phase as a turning point, our whole goal changes. At 1, 2, and 3, we're focused on prevention. At 4 and 5, we're focused on safety. What can we do to keep this from being dangerous? At 6, safety's still there, but at 6, we have some strategies we can use to help this go down. At 7, we want to gradually start getting the student back to where they can be calm. And there are some little things we'll do in there, but it's really important to understand that everything we've got that works well, everything that really has high probability, none of our instructional strategies, none of our other things work very well at any other phase. So we're going to try to load all of our instruction and all of our prevention into calm. What we do at trigger and agitation is early intervention. We see it, let's get to it quickly and try to keep it from blowing up. Everything else is really just trying to keep a lid on something. So I'm going to go through each of these phases and talk in a little more depth about how you'd know if a student was in that phase and what you should do if they're in that phase. And like I said, we'll switch gears and actually start looking at some real kinds of problems and what we could do about those problems. So we'll start with calm. The indicators. You know a student is in the calm if they can do things like this: follow directions, stay on task, receive a correction without blowing up, or set goals and develop plans for what they want to do in the future. Those are all things that we want to see. These are teachable moment times. When these kids are like this, we can give them lots of instruction. And if you have kids that are volatile, that tend to have behavior problems and escalate, this is where we teach them how to deal with those problems. Once a kid is up there in phase 4, acceleration, they're not going to listen to you saying, why don't you let me tell you how not to get this mad? They're not listening to it then. It has to be taught to them here. You can remind them of it later, but all of our instruction needs to happen here. So because we've got this going in our direction when we're at the calm phase, we want to use this to teach. Set kids up to be receiving positive reinforcement for doing positive behavior, simply because the more times kids receive reinforcement for doing it the right way, the more likely they are to keep doing it the right way. So we're creating that. Communicate expectations. You can do this. I can help you. Teach them again how to solve the problems that get them going and get them escalating. And tell them now about the consequences. Don't wait until they've had a problem and then say, okay, let me decide that your consequence for that is this. Because if you decide what the consequence is after the problem, you're going to be the bad guy in this situation. Like, how dare you tell me I can't do that? Hey, you took my... You don't want to be in that position. So we're going to teach up front, this is what the right thing is. When you're doing the right thing, these good things happen to you. Now, if you were to do the wrong thing, we're going to give you a reminder. We're going to give you a chance to come back. But if you decide to take that road and do it the wrong way, this will be the consequence. Now, I would hate for you to ever need to get that consequence. I don't want that to ever happen. So I'm going to be teaching you and reminding you and helping you not to get there. But you can see that if it actually does happen, I want my consequence to be delivered like, I'm really sorry you made that decision because, as you know, you earned this. I didn't give it to you. You earned it. But the only way that works is if they know ahead of time what the consequence is. Otherwise, it seems like you're just being mean. So we need to teach them what the consequences are for good and not good behavior. Okay, so it would be great if it was calm all the time. And most of the time, even for our most challenging kids, it is. But things happen. Triggers happen. Now, you all know kids for whom the trigger is totally obvious. I know if this kid is called a name by that kid, it's gonna go. Okay, so we can kind of think about where these triggers are with some kids and figure out ways to avoid them. But I would say most of the time, when I see a kid escalating, I don't really know exactly what it was that triggered them. And so I could ask them, but when they're angry, they're not likely to give me a calm answer that we can talk about. So what we want to do is we want to be looking for triggers all the time. And like I said, when we see one that we know is coming, avoid it. I know that if I call on this kid to answer a problem, to answer a question in front of all the other kids, and he doesn't know the answer, it'll blow. So I need some strategies for how do I ask him questions in front of others? Maybe I go around ahead of time and say, I'm going to be asking you a question like this. So think about what the answer is, and I'll come by and see if you've got it. I won't call on you until, So I can be thinking about proactively how to avoid that situation. Because if I know this situation will set this kid off, I don't want to go into that situation unless I've done something to lessen the probability of the problem. Otherwise, it's just a setup, and we want to avoid that. So when a kid is triggered, if you don't know what the trigger is, you'll notice that the triggering has happened because of their behavior. So this might be because of a series of unresolved conflicts. It could be, again, because somebody said something, something happened. I believe somebody is looking at me, a million different things that might set kids off. Here's how I know. Generally, if a kid has been triggered, they can't concentrate. So I can be talking to them and they can kind of be looking at me, but really they're looking around and I can say, so you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, yeah. But they didn't. They haven't heard a word I said because they're focused on this thing, this perceived slight, this consequence they think is coming, this something that they don't like that's going on. They're perseverating. It's a light perseveration because you can still get them to talk to you, but they're not listening to what you're saying. So when you see these kids that have been triggered, a lot of times it will be that they're just distracted and they're looking around. A lot of times they'll look at a person in particular and you'll begin to see some tension. You'll begin to see a holding, a tight like this, a clenched jaw. And it's not that they're mad necessarily, but it's that they're prepared. This could get bad. This could get bad. So when we see kids that are in that first phase of trigger, they're not yelling yet. They're not going threatening or doing anything else. They're just hunkered. Our role at this juncture is distraction. Distraction means do something to get them to stop thinking about what they're perseverating on right now. So I like to, when I see a kid like this, say, hey, did you see that show last night? Here's something I'll bet you didn't know. Or, hey, come here. Can you help me do this? I'm trying to get that focus that's going down the track. So think of this as a train heading down a track, and the more momentum it gets, the more it's going to go up. So I'm trying to take it off the tracks before it has a chance to build any momentum. So if I could say, hey, come here. But just going over there and talking might not be enough because they're not really listening. So you've got to kind of jolt them with, come help me. Did you see this? Have you ever seen anything like this? There's got to be something to get a conversation going to get the train off the tracks. Now, that would be great if that always worked. It doesn't always work. And when it doesn't work, and sometimes we don't see the trigger in time, it moves on to agitation. There's a thin line between trigger and agitation. In the beginning of trigger is pretty mild. The end of agitation is pretty big. But right where they come together, it's not that big. So think about it like this is me being triggered to this is me being agitated. There's this obvious change in my demeanor from I'm focused on something to something is just driving me nuts. And so what you'll see as kids agitate is they'll increase their hand movements and their eye movements in their head, and they're looking and they do not want to talk. Kids who are agitated, this is what you might hear. Hey, I know, be quiet. They don't want to hear about it. They are so hyper-focused and perseverating on whatever it is that they can't listen to anything. So you see a complete drop-off in on-task behavior. They're distracted from everything. They can't track anything. So we make a different decision here. Remember, at trigger, we tried to distract them. Hey, what about this? When they're more in the agitation, it's more of a redirection. Hey, I need you to do this. Can you come with me here? It's not a question. It's not a little, what about this? Have you considered it's a direction? Not mean, not mad. But I'm trying to get them to get that train off the track once again. And that train is a lot harder to get off the track as it gets moving. But this is your last chance. So I'm going to make direction. Hey, I need you to come here with me. I need you to do this. I need you to help me with this. Please come here. So I'm going to do whatever I can to try to change what's going on. If I know they're triggered by that kid, I'll send that kid to the office, not as a punishment. Could you go to the office and get this for me? Can you go do? But I'll try to arrange the environment in a way that will allow that train to slow its momentum. But realize, if I don't slow the momentum of that train right now, it's going on to the next phase. And at the next phase, I'm not going to be able to do anything. I don't even have a chance. Now, what I've described so far could happen over a period of minutes or seconds. And that's the hard part a lot of times, is that by the time I realize this kid's been triggered, he or she has already flown through the trigger phase and is 3/4 of the way through agitation. And by the time I get over there, it's too late. So with kids like that, I want to really think about where they're seated and where I'm standing and how I move, because I want to be able to be in a situation where if I see this starting, I can get to it immediately. It may be that the time it takes me to stop doing what I'm doing and walk across the room is too much. And so again, you've got different kinds of kids that are really volatile and kids that are somewhere in between, low to high. The most volatile kids are really challenging in this nature. They escalate quickly. Whether we've had an opportunity to stop the escalation or not, once it reaches that next phase, we change what we do. So again, here we've been minimizing frustrations and getting them distracted or redirected in this instance. But when they move to the acceleration phase, it's very different. At the acceleration phase, we stop thinking about how do we distract them and we start thinking about how do we keep everybody safe. So you'll know that a student has iterated the acceleration because all bets are off here. There's nothing they won't say or do. I mean, each kid's got their limit of what they'll do, but I've worked with kids that at this level would stab you if they had something to stab you with. It generally starts with words. Kids, a lot of times that escalate like this, don't have strong vocabularies and can't tell you exactly what they're feeling and thinking. So they'll lash out at what they perceive to be the thing that is the most easy target. So you kind of have to have thick skin as an adult here and think about, if somebody was going to make fun of me for something, what would it be? Because that's what's coming. So when I've dealt with kids in lockdown settings who are extremely volatile, if there are any women in the area, they'll start yelling out, whore, slut, that kind of thing, because they are so frustrated, want to say something, and they want to do the most damage. And so that's what they believe will do the most harm. Ethnic slurs, sexually inappropriate comments, expect those things at this phase. Now, if you're working in the average public school, probably not that often that you're going to see that, but you do on occasion. Don't get caught up in it. This is not the time to say, how dare you? Because you're just feeding them when you do that. That's what they want. You have to think that as kids go up, we go down. If you go up with them, you intensify the escalation. So they're going to one-up you. So if they call you a name and you say something back to them, they're going up. We can't do that. And I found that oftentimes with kids that are really say ridiculously rude and horrible things, that it's hard not to address it. But this is not the time. I always try to remind people, you have from now until forever to tell that kid that was wrong. If you do it now, you're going to make it worse. You are going to be able to do it. Now's not the time. When kids are doing these things, and it's going to be verbal abuse, verbal aggression, physical abuse, physical aggression, and there'll be a point where they might try to escape, especially as we hit the peak, and I'll talk about that in a second. Here's what we do. We provide a calming presence for the rest of the class, and we try to move kids in such a way that it keeps things safe. Sometimes this is called a room clear, where you might say, instead of trying to pick up this Tasmanian devil and move them, we get the other kids to move out of the way. But what bottom line is, we should be thinking safety. Are there things here that could become projectiles? Are there sharp things here? As you see that this has turned to acceleration, that should be your first thought. What could go wrong in the worst way? How do I get people out of the way, things out of the way, etc.? But you have to be able to do that while remaining super calm. So it's like, I want to scream to everybody, get out of the way. And you can't. You have to calmly signal to people and move them, and move slowly and deliberately, because the more you look like you're escalating, the more they will escalate. And it's very challenging to do this when we get way up into this phase. So just be thinking about having a crisis management plan. Now, in the places where I worked, that was built in because all the kids had crises. But when I worked in a regular public school, I had to kind of create my own crisis management plan. And I had the self-contained room with behavior challenged kids. And so I would set up a little deal. Well, I had a card that was bright red. And I would say, I kept that by the door. And if something was really going bad, I would give that card to a kid and say, run this to the office for me. When the office got that red card, they knew they needed to send reinforcement, someone to help calm the class while we dealt with this kid. Sometimes you can do that on a phone with a code word or a walkie-talkie. Again, it just depends on where you work it, but you should have something set up in advance, some way of signaling that we need a crisis plan to go into action. Now, I get if you work in a typical room where you don't have big escalations that you probably haven't thought this through, but I think you should at least be thinking through, if this did happen, how would I get assistance? Because you can't leave the room. I mean, I guess you can always just say to a kid, go get help. But again, the more you act like you're flustered, the more likely it is to increase the escalation of that student. Now, the next phase isn't so much a phase as a turning point. But a lot of times what I've experienced with kids is that when they hit the peak, it's like they finally hit this level where they've even kind of scared themselves. Like, I've seen a kid like pick up a chair and just throw it at the teacher, and then all of a sudden feel like, uh-oh, I'm gonna really get it. I'm in big trouble now. And I've seen kids just turn on a dime, throw the chair at someone, and then go, oh, I'm sorry, but, and then they want to blame project this, and it was your fault for saying that to me in the first place. But they're backtracking now. So they're starting to come down, and notice that the cycle when we get away from peak is going down fairly steep. We'll stick with peak here for just a second. Our job still here is safety. When kids come to that peak part, and if they start saying, I'm sorry, but this was your fault, or I wouldn't have done this for him, or I wouldn't, just agree. Yeah, okay, right. Just get yourself calm. Everything's fine. Just reassure them. Again, I've seen at this point a teacher say, wow, you've really done it this time. Why? Why would we say that? Because all that does is get the kid like, oh, you're right. I've got more problems coming. I'm going right back up. Fake calm. That's what we're doing. Fake our calm and just continue what we're doing to keep things safe. Now, once that swivels at the peak and starts coming back down, you'll notice that the students will act confused. They'll a lot of times kind of act exhausted. It's emotionally exhausting to have one of these kind of tantrums, I assume. They may try to reconcile with you, apology, deny that they did it, or place the blame on you or others. But they may be responsive at this level to very concrete directions. So at this point, I might be saying, thank you for getting it under control. I'm impressed at how you're able to get yourself calm. Tell you what, why don't you just keep calm, and we can talk about this later. No, nothing right now. Why don't you just have a seat over there by yourself and just calm yourself? So it's a very concrete direction that isn't delivered with any kind of anything that would make you think I'm going to come after you. I'm just telling you that, one, thank you for starting to calm this. Your job now is to continue calming. Thanks for doing that, and let them calm. Here's where we see mistakes often. When a kid is de-escalating, they're already triggered and agitated. And the acceleration has now stopped, but at a second's notice, they can start acceleration again. They don't have to go back through trigger and agitation to get to acceleration. So they're coming down, and when you say, wait till you see the punishment I'm going to give you for this, we don't need to go through a trigger and an agitation. They can be right back up. So don't talk to them. Stay away. Let them calm. And again, you got to know your kids. Some kids can get themselves calm in a few minutes, and I've literally worked with kids where it's been hours. How do you know if they're calm? You don't. You guess, and they're really calm isn't the right word. How do you know when it's time to do the recovery? You guess. Know your kid. So here's what I do as a test. When I really think, okay, I think that kid, because I know this kid somewhat, seems like they're calm enough to go into recovery. Recovery is where we try to get them back with us, but very slowly. And we're still not talking about consequences. I might go over to a kid and say, you know, I'm really impressed about how you're getting yourself calm again. And, you know, I think you can get back with us. And, let's just get back with us and do something simple. But tell you what, for right now, could you just move? And I need that chair. Would you mind moving to a different chair? And if that kid says, I'm sick of having to follow directions, what you know is it's not time yet. Don't say a word, just walk away. At the point where you can go over and ask a very simple question, could you move? Could you give me this? Could you? And it's nothing that's we're doing in restitution yet or any kind of debriefing. It's just the simplest question. But when you can get a kid to follow a simple suggestion, then it's time to go to recovery where we start asking for some bigger things. But at recovery, I'm still not doing a full debrief. What I'm doing here is getting them back to what we're doing. And I usually present it like this. Everybody else is doing 3 pages. Tell you what, if you can just get to your desk and get a paper out, get your name on it, and do problem 1, that's all you need to do. Now, this is where a lot of times when I talk about this, people say, oh, this isn't fair. This kid threw this big tantrum, disrupted the whole room, and now they don't have to do the work. No, I call this step 1. Doing all the work is right here. That's too big of a step. Do all the work is a big step. What's the first step in doing all the work? 1 problem. I'm going to keep adding on. And it might take a while. And the reality is, some of this might be done after class. It might be that, hey, you, because of this, will miss your free time because we need to keep finishing this. But that's a consequence I would have taught way back when. So now I might come back around. Wow, you got your paper out and your name on it. You really got yourself under control. I'm impressed with that. Tell you what, again, everybody else is doing 3 pages. Why don't you just work on the next 2 problems? And I just keep doing this until we're done with that. And again, when we're done with it as a class, we'll have to find time for them to come back and make up what they missed. But we'll do it in a calm way. Okay, now we've gone through recovery. We're back, and they're back at the calm phase again. Now I want to find some time when I can have a personal conversation. And I can say, so how might you have handled that better? Here's what happened. What was it that really upset you so much? So because of that, you realize, right, that the consequence is this. And I feel really bad that that's what you earned. So I'd like to help you. Well, if that happened again, what could you do? How could I help remind you? What would work to make it so this didn't happen again? Now, he may have called me the worst horrible names that could ever be called. I'm an adult. I can live with that. What I want is, how can I help you do something, learn something that would make this not happen again? The consequence is built in. We've already talked about the consequences. So the consequence is you're suspended, or you've got this, or you got that. That's all delivered as part of this. And once I deliver it, I move immediately to, so how can I help you not do this again? But you can't take personally the things they called you. I'll never forget that you called me. You have to forget it. Otherwise, this is never going to work again. You have to be able to let that error on that part be something you teach and say, I want to help you not do that again. But you just can't take these things personally as an adult that works with kids. Otherwise, it will have no relationship with a kid ever. Okay, so we've gone through all the phases. We've gotten back to calm. Now I want to go back to, and if you were with me on my earlier session today, you know, I like to talk about this in terms of probability. So what does it mean to think probability here? Well, I think all of the little things we've talked about in each of those phases were what's going on, what do we do to increase the probability? But the probability of what? The probability of future success. That's what we're always concerned with. There was an error, we correct the error. There's a consequence for the error. But as a teacher, what I want is success the next time. What's 2 + 2? It's 5. What can I do to correct that, but at the same time make it more likely you'll say 4 next time? Think about it in those terms, but for behavior. So I want you to think about it like this. I've got a classroom filled with really, really volatile middle school kids. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a brand new teacher in that room and lock the door for a week, and we're going to see what happens. There'll be volatile kids and there'll be a teacher dealing with it. Now, to make this more interesting, we're going to bet. I'm going to take all of your money, your entire bank account, your retirement, everything, and I'm going to make you wager it here. Here's the bet. If the kids in that room are able to be on task 80% of the time and nobody needs to be removed from that room, you win double all of your life savings. If not, you lose it. So if you're thinking about it in terms of high stakes, you're going to want to think about it in terms of probability, which means it's like a wager. So think about it in terms of we're in a sports book wagering, but we're not watching video of football. We're watching video of this classroom. What would you want to see that teacher doing if you were maximizing the probability of you winning that money? And so you can see, if you thought, I've got $1 million riding on this, you do not want to hear the teacher saying something sarcastic back to the kid or yelling back at the kid, because you're going to lose your money. That might be what feels best at the time, but if we're thinking probability-wise, it's a bad bet. So what we want to do is implement the things we've just talked about, because those are our best bet. And even though we talked about generalities of things to do, somewhere along the line, you're going to run into a kid that is weird and does things that you have to completely rethink how these things happen. But the logic stays the same. Prevention, early intervention, safety, easing them down, and not losing your cool while it's going on. There'll be a kid that challenges us with that. Certainly in my career, there have been a lot of them. So let's go back and think about what we can do. And I could spend a whole day just talking about strategies at the calm phase, but I want to spend the rest of our time really talking about trigger and agitation. So let's just do this. At the calm phase, we need to teach them. What should you do when somebody makes you mad? What should you do when you know you've made a mistake and there's a consequence coming? What should you do? It's how to handle frustration, how to solve a conflict. We teach. It's a set of rules. Here's what you do. When this happens, try this, try those. Those are what we call rules. Routines and arrangements are the other things we do to make it work. So where should I be standing? What should the schedule look like if I want to make that less likely to ever happen in the first place? What should the seating arrangement be? I feel like I can make a whole lot of probabilities change in my favor by controlling where kids sit in a classroom. So I really am a big fan of the assigned seats. But how do I keep them engaged? How do I keep it positive? Those are all things that are going to work in my favor. So that's all we're going to talk about in terms of rules. I'm sorry, I wanted to say one more thing. Don't teach kids what not to do. Teach them what to do. So the sign on the right, a random sign I found on the internet, I don't really know what it's about. It's ridiculous. The sign on the left is from a school. I think they both suffer from a logic problem. I believe of all the kids I've worked with, the vast majority are very aware that they're not supposed to hit, kick, push, spit, etc. Why do they do it? They don't know what else to do, and it works really well. If you want someone to quit bugging you, slug them in the face, they'll probably stop. So it's not a matter of teaching kids not to do that. It's a matter of teaching them what they should be doing instead. So make sure that when we're teaching during the calm, we're teaching kids what to do. So you can remind them, hey, what did we talk about here would be a good thing to try right now? But saying, remember not to do this, doesn't really help. Because if I'm really frustrated, I already know I'm not supposed to do it, but it works, and I'm going to do that eventually. So now, let's go back and talk about target and agitation. I've got acceleration circled there, but really we're going to talk about the bottom two. And here's what I want to do. We went out and we asked teachers, what are the kind of behaviors that challenge you as a teacher, that bother you? And we got a list, and we're doing the top 4. So the top 4 were kids that do things that disrupt instruction, kids that do things that are provocative, that just to make everybody gasp and laugh, kids that are non-compliant, refuse to follow the simple rules and routines we've given them, and kids that are disrespectful to adults. So I want to go through each one of those and show an escalation. And it's not going to be an escalation that goes up into acceleration and peak, well, maybe a little bit. It's going to be more mild. So as I do this, I'm going to shift away and show you some videos. So all of the videos you're getting ready to see are made up. So I wrote scripts for a kid having a disruptive behavior. And when they say number 1, there'll also be a teacher handling it in a really poor way, not doing the things we've talked about. And so what I want to do is show you the escalation, it not being handled well. And then we'll talk about what could a teacher have done differently under these circumstances. So let me find disruptive classroom number 1, or disruptive number 1. There it is. Okay. Share. Okay, so situation is this kid's clearly agitated when he walks in the room. And again, this is scripted for the teacher to do the things. These are all kids and adults that are actors or friends of mine that pretend to be actors. So here we go.
Caleb, cool it. Okay, everyone, I need you to get your papers out from yesterday. Those need to be on your desk. Caleb, if you do not have yours out, that will be a 0 for this assignment. Caleb, I am not going to play these games with you today. Pick up the paper or go to the office. Pick it up. Caleb, I don't know what your problem is, but you will not be disruptive in my class. Do you understand what I'm saying?
What y'all looking at?
That's it. To the office. Out.
Okay, so what you all saw there was a teacher, first a kid having some problems. Clearly the kid had some problem behaviors. And the teacher came in and immediately started fussing at him about this, which didn't work very well. And again, she was scripted to do this. She just kept pecking at him. She never said, could you show me this, please? She said, you're not going to disrupt my class. It was all about her. I'm not going to let you do this. I don't know why you're doing this. I'm not going to allow this today. And she just kept going back at him and back at him. Even when he kind of stopped doing stuff, she still walked over there and started nagging at him again. And what do you expect to happen if you're already agitated and then the teacher comes and starts pecking at you? It goes up. Very predictable. Now, the kid had problem behavior first. So the question is, how might we handle that? And here's some things to think about. First of all, prevention-wise, we might want to have thought with that student about how we could engage them positively earlier in that routine. So he comes in, again, I think he's already clearly agitated when he comes in. But what I want to do is I would want to get something going that's positive right off. So this really becomes a reaction one very early. If I recognize that he's agitated, then I want to provide a redirection. So, hey, Caleb, tell you what, why don't you just get out your book right now and I'm going to show you something. But ask him to do something. Now, it may be with this kid that asking him to do that in front of everybody would also be problematic. And so it's generally a good idea if you can deliver these a little more privately. But I like to think about when this is delivered, it should be, this is for you, not for me. So, hey, Caleb, I know you can do this. All we got to do is this and this. Why don't you just get started? I'll be right back. Well, in fact, why don't you take a couple minutes, get yourself together. I'll come back. Looks like maybe you're a little bit tired right now. I'll come back and we'll get this going. That I've got to set this up in a positive manner. I'm giving you a direction. Here's what I want you to do. But I'm concerned for the student, not for me. When someone is escalating, there's frustration involved. And if you go to a frustrated person and make it all about you, it generally doesn't help the frustration. So we want to express this as a choice for the student. Here's what you could do. You could really do well in this class if you could get this piece done. It would really help your grade. I'd like to help you get that done. So tell you what, why don't you do this and I'll come right back and help you with the next piece. I can't sit there with them all day, but I could say I'll be back more often. And that's really what I'm doing differently is I'm trying to come by more often and be positive and get it going. Now, if that doesn't work, it's on you and the consequence is on you, but I will make that your choice. So if you do this, this will happen. Make a good choice. Because if you go this way, you know what's coming and you don't need that. You can get out of this easily by just doing this. Let me know how I can help. I'll be right back. Move away, come back. Move away, come back. And it's another strategy I use with kids that are escalating is the more I stand there and stare at them, the more it becomes something. So I like to make the comment, leave. Come back, leave. Keep moving around rather than just hovering and staring. So it's not an ultimatum, it's a choice. Let's look at how it might happen differently. Okay, disruptive number 2. Okay, so remember, these are scripted. When I script these, the actors don't always do exactly what I say. I think this one is much better. It's about the teacher talks to the kid in a quiet voice. It's much more positive. I might suggest that the teacher could have said even more about how this is for him, not her, but it's still way better.
Okay, everybody, I need you to get out your papers that we were working on yesterday and start on problem number 7. Problem number 7. Caleb, look, you almost were finished with this yesterday. I want you to start here on number 7. You know how to do these problems. It's just like number 6 from yesterday. So can you go ahead and get started? I need you to make a good choice.
Man, I'm not in the mood today.
I can see that you're not in the mood, Caleb, but I really need you to get this assignment finished, okay? Make a good choice. You need to pass this class.
Mr. Carson giving me detention for nothing?
I can see that you're upset and with Mr. Carson, and you and I can talk about that detention later, okay? But right now it's important to focus on math and get this problem done. Keep your lunch down. Great choice, Caleb. Nice job.
So the other thing I forgot to tell you is that the version number 2 always has a happy ending because I wrote these and I want happy endings. But what if the kid just doesn't ever respond to the teacher and continues to escalate? Well, again, that happens. And when it does, the teacher would just continue to follow through with the protocol. And there would, if the kid decided to get run out, that's what you do, but you put your crisis plan in place. But I hope nobody thinks, I'm not suggesting if you do the right things, nothing will ever escalate past agitation. It will. It's just a much better probability. So let's move on to a different behavior. And we'll say here, this one is provocative behavior. So in provocative behavior, kids are doing something that is meant specifically to get everybody's attention in a negative way. So I'm playing the teacher in this one, and here's a kid that comes in with an obviously very inappropriate message written on his shirt. And again, the way it's scripted is I blow it up bigger than it needs to be.
Nope, dress code violation. I'm not getting a shirt on. I don't care who got it for you. It's inappropriate. You're not wearing it. It's my business because it's inappropriate. Out. You need to leave until you get that shirt fixed because it's against the dress code.
Okay, so you all know what a provocative behavior is. I'm sure you've had opportunities to see them before.
The video for that one actually didn't show for us. I'm
It didn't.
wondering if you can try doing that one more time. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I tried going to it a different way, and that was a mistake. Let's try this way again. Provocative number 1. All right, here we go again. Sorry about that.
Take a seat. Nope, dress code violation. Not coming in with that shirt on.
My mom gave it to me.
I don't care who got it for you. It's inappropriate. You're not wearing it here.
Well, if mom says it's okay to wear, then it's none of your business.
It's my business because it's inappropriate. Out.
What's your problem?
You need to leave until you get that shirt fixed because it's against the dress code.
All right, so Punk thought he could wear that shirt into my classroom. I won't have it. So kids do things purposefully. I mean, we know that. So we know that kids will wear a t-shirt with a message like that or something else because it'll get our goat. That's why they do it. But if you think about it that way, then everything I just did made that work better. So when kids are provocative and we say, oh my God, that's horrible, you're just feeding it. You're just making it worse. So it's back to this idea again that as kids are escalating something, you can't escalate with them or it will just feed it for them. So when kids are provocative, first of all, prevention part, think about be very, very explicit and clear about what is and is not appropriate. So dress code is a big one. So don't wear something inappropriate or with an inappropriate message isn't good instruction. How would we know? Because all you're going to get is the kid going, well, I didn't think that was inappropriate, so teach it. I think you have to be the same way with what is respectful and disrespectful language. Okay, here are the examples. So if you're doing something that doesn't fit this definition, it is disrespectful. And so that stuff has to be taught up front so that we aren't just getting into a little argument about this. We have to be clear about what is and what is not appropriate. Okay. Once the kid has had the problem, it's not a problem for me. It's a problem for them. No reason for me to be excited. What I want to be doing with a kid like that is saying, hey, you remember what we talked about for appropriate and inappropriate messages? That one fits the definition because of this and this. And even if they argue, well, I'm just telling you, it's going to be a problem for you. You're going to lose that. Or you're going to be suspended. Or you're going to, and I would say, I don't think it's worth it. I mean, it's up to you. It's totally your choice. But if you don't want that to happen, here are some things you could do. And I'm giving them some choices of things they could do to fix it. So not everything has an easy fix, but dress code things typically do, and a lot of other similar kinds of things. Racial slurs, sexually appropriate comments. Generally, when we start talking about those kind of things, the fix is a sincere apology. Sometimes it's restorative practices where we actually talk in the community about how hurtful that is and why. But there's got to be something that you do to demonstrate something back. I can't take it away for you. Me sending you to the office with that shirt doesn't really solve anything. I want you to solve it yourself. That's what we want in terms of what's a success, or what do we want? We want a kid's success moving forward. So I'm not going to do it for them, but I want them to know that I'm on their side and here are the options you have. So as we talk about that, let's look at how I might have handled that differently.
Have a seat. Thank you. Hey, Stephen, hang on there a second. I want to talk to you. Come on in, guys. Have a seat. You know what to do. Come on in. Welcome. Thanks, guys. Come on in. Hey, you know, that shirt is really pretty inappropriate. I don't think you're going to make it through the day. You're going to end up getting in trouble if you wear that shirt.
Mom got it for me.
That's even more of a reason why you wouldn't want to lose that shirt, right? Because if you wear it through the day, you are going to get in trouble. See, the thing is, because it's so inappropriate to get in dress code, if I were to have to see you wearing it out here, I'm going to have to go tell the principal. I don't think it's that big a deal. I don't want you to get in trouble for it, but it's up to you. So I'll tell you what we could do. You could come in here. I've got another shirt I could have you wear, or I can give you a pass to go to PE to get another shirt. But you're going to have to make a choice of how to fix this.
I'll just take your shirt.
I think that's a good choice for you. Come on in. I'll get it for you.
So again, happy ending. I've said often to kids, you know, this isn't me. I don't care. I don't find that super alarming. But we as a school have made a decision about what is and is not appropriate. And it's been made clear to everybody. So you're going to have to do something about that, or I will have to follow through. And again, I don't think it's that big a deal, so I'd rather not do that. So why don't you think about how you might be able to fix this? And here are some choices. Here's some things you might try. But even if that shirt said the most horrendous, offensive thing I've ever seen, I would still play it that way. Because I think if the kid thinks they've got me, they've offended me, there's some control in that. And if they can control me, they'll try to do it again. I want them to think he cares about me. He doesn't get flustered and doesn't fly off the handle, so there's no reason to kind of mess with him and see what happens. I'm the adult in this role. So let me show you another one here in just a second. Moving on to a different one. Trying to keep an eye on the time, make sure we have a chance to see all of these. The next one we have is non-compliance. Non-compliance number 1. Okay, so I wrote this one. There's all kinds of non-compliance. I wrote this one with a very particular kind of non-compliant kid. This is a kid that when I say, hey, here's what we're doing now, get busy, they say, I can't. And I say, what do you mean you can't? And they've got 10 reasons. I don't have a pencil. I don't have a book. I need to go to the bathroom. I need to see the nurse. I need to call my mom. I need to go out in the hall. I need to go to my locker. And every one of them I say, oh, I can fix that for you. I know, but I still need the 9 other things. So I can do the first 2 for you. I know, but I still need the other 8 things. And it's a wild goose chase. Every time I say, oh, I can fix that. Well, but I still need. And so every time I give a direction, it ends up being a big, long argument about all the reasons why that can't possibly happen. And it's not my fault. I can't do it because of all these reasons. So I think you just don't follow a kid when they lead you on that goose chase. But here is the teacher in this situation is definitely going on the chase.
Class?
Yes.
Class?
Yes, yes.
All right, it's time to start our letters. You have 20 minutes. I'm going to start the timer now. Please begin. Sydney, get out your paper and get started.
I don't understand.
We discussed it. You know the assignment. Get started.
I don't have a paper.
I gave everyone a paper. You do have a paper. Get it out and get started.
I don't have a pencil.
You have a pencil in your desk. Get it out and get started.
I'm not using this.
You are going to use it or you're going to get a 0.
I'll go to my locker then.
No, sit down and use the pencil and the paper that I gave you and get started.
Discuss how the teacher handled the situation.
You know, when we talked about the phases of escalating behavior and talked about kids, you know, murder and smoke and gunfire, really, that was an escalation. And it happened quickly, but it wasn't super intense. But you could tell there was a trigger, whatever it was. There was an agitation, her just, no, I can't do this work. And every time the teacher said, yes, you can, she would have another reason why she couldn't, until it got to the point where she really accelerated and just got up and left the room. So that's still what we're talking about. It's still an escalation. So let me go back and let's talk about noncompliance. This is the one, by the way, that teachers say they see the most. And if you're a teacher, you didn't need to know that. You already knew that. Okay. First, the more you do things in the same way on a regular basis, the better in terms of kids being non-compliant. Like, hey, every day when I say time to do this, we all do it in the exact same way, in the same order, at the same times. So the more it's like that, the less likely kids are to get stuck in this non-compliance, not following the direction. So we really want to have some consistency, teach and model that, and be consistent with it. Reminders are a big deal. The more you can remind, okay, we're getting ready to do this next. Remember, when we do this, you're going to need to have a paper and a book. So we've got 5 minutes before we start. Make sure you have what you need. Those reminders ahead of time are also really big in terms of prevention and in praising when you see kids doing it the way we're supposed to do it. When a kid is non-compliant, make sure that we give them a direction. So your first thing might be, right now we're all writing, so what should you be doing right now? Could you show me that, please? I can't, I don't have a pencil. Then your next remark should be, okay, I can help you with that. Here's what I need you to do. You need to get out a paper and a book. And when you get those out and are ready, I'll deal with a pencil. The idea here is that kids have to do something to get something. I'm not at your beck and call where you just say, I need a pencil, I need a paper, and I come and do it. So for a lot of times I've had these kids that are out of their seat and I say, take a seat, please, we're getting ready to go. I can't take my seat, I need a pencil. When I see you sitting down, I'll get you a pencil. Well, what's the point of sitting down if I don't have a pencil? And I told you, you really want a pencil, here's how to get one. Have a seat. Okay, then they have a seat and I get them a pencil, thank you. Okay, well, I don't have the right book. Tell you what, you get your name on the paper and get it numbered the way it's supposed to, and when that's done, I'll make sure you have a book. Well, why would I get my name on the paper if I don't even have a book? And I told you, if you really want a book, here's what to do. Now, what this does is at the end of the class, there may be a kid that didn't follow through with any of that, and then they go, hey, I wanted to do it, I didn't have a pencil. And you can say, no. I told you that if you needed a pencil, you could do this and I would get you one. You chose not to do that. These were your choices. I understand that you had some things you think you needed, and I told you that I would help you with them, and I gave you a way to do that. Now, if kids weren't going to do it anyway, they weren't going to do it anyway, but at least you've got this. You can't say you didn't do it because you didn't have a pencil. You didn't do it because you chose not to do the things you needed to do to get the pencil. So we just become a broken record. It's one thing. I'm only asking you to do one thing. When that's done, we can talk about your wish list. So now you want another thing, and now you want another thing. Some of those we're not going to do. Okay, now I want to go to the office and call my mom. Yeah, well, that's one that you can't do until you get all this work done. Sorry, that's just not part of what we do right now. I'd love to help you with that. And when you get all your work done at the end of the class, I'm happy to call the office and ask if that's okay, but we're not doing that right now. I mean, you still have a bottom line of where we go with this, but we have to make sure that it's one thing at a time. So think about what are all the things you want this kid to do. Make sure that they have done the first one before you help them with the second one. They need to learn that the way I get the teacher to do something is by doing what the teacher asked. So it's I do it, teacher does it. The way we want them to think about this. So we'll get to compliant number 2.
Yes. Time to get started on our letters. We've gone over the directions. Does anybody have any questions? All right, go ahead and get started. You have 20 minutes. Sydney, why are you not started?
I don't understand.
If you go ahead and get your paper out and go ahead and write your greeting, I'll come over and help you with the directions.
I don't have a pencil.
If you have a pencil on your desk, please get it out and get started.
I don't want to use this.
Okay, so if you'll get a paper out, go ahead and get started. Start on your greeting. I'll go find you a better pencil. Does that work? Sounds good.
Okay, go. Do you have a question about the assignment? Okay, what do you not understand?
Well, I wasn't here for something.
If I gave you an example, would it help? A couple students said that they weren't a fan of Thanksgiving.
Okay, so I've had people ask me at times when I talk about this particular scenario saying, well, the kid got exactly what she wanted. Well, said she needed help. She said she needed a pencil, but the teacher each time made her do something first. But I've still had people say, yeah, but she was just being ornery and eventually got away with it. And I always want to go back to, but keep your eye on the prize. What did we want? We wanted a kid getting their work done, remaining in class, following directions. That's what we got. Some of that was some sass and a little bit of rudeness, etc. We can have a talk with her after class, personal and private, about those things. But if I try to say that those things are so bothersome to me that I'm not going to deal with them, well, then this kid's never going to make it through class. So again, I have to pick and choose my spots. And I have to keep my eye on the prize, and that prize being that kid does what I've asked them to do, they do it successfully, they stay in class. So let's do the last one. If non-compliance is the one that teachers say they see the most, this next one, disrespect, is the one they say bothers them the most. Excuse me. All right, so this is an older video. This is actually one that Jeff Colvin scripted out. So this kid is clearly being disrespectful to the teacher, as you'll see, but this teacher flies off the handle. This teacher puts on a show, and this is middle school. I remember being in middle school, and if I thought somebody could do something simple and make the teacher just throw a complete tizzy, I'd have probably thought it was worth it. Again, to have control over an adult, to watch them throw this tizzy. So I think that's what all the kids are learning here.
Quit it.
Some of you students are unbelievably rude. I don't know why I waste my time with you. Stupid butthead. What did you say?
Nothing.
So what'd you say?
I didn't say anything.
Okay, so what good can come of that interaction we saw there at the end? The teacher walks over to the kid and in a very threatening manner puffs his chest out. One, I think what we want to be teaching to kids is how to control our emotions, and that certainly was not how to control your emotions. But two, one kid saying butthead about the teacher in the back of the room was enough to make the whole class stop. We're not teaching anymore. And enough to make the teacher actually start escalating to the point where the teacher's walking back and it feels like there's a threat coming from the teacher. I feel like we went all the way into teacher escalation on that. I don't see any kid escalation, really. It's the teacher. So what we want to think about with disrespectful behavior is, once again, teach what it means to use respectful language for people. Be very clear about what it means so that when someone does something that's not that, you can go, we said it was these three things. That's not it. That's therefore, we know it was disrespectful. Now, when kids are disrespectful, the worst thing we can do is to let them know it bothered us. Never let them see you sweat. It has to roll off your back. It might be horrible, and we're going to deal with it, but you can't let it affect what you're doing in front of everybody. Because, again, as a middle school kid, if I believe, wow, somebody says something simple and we don't have to do instruction the rest of the day because the teacher throws a tantrum and goes over yelling at this kid, I wonder what would happen if we put a check on his chair tomorrow. I'll bet we wouldn't have to do work for a week. The teacher's setting up more of this because the purpose of disrespect is to have somebody feel disrespected. And if they're going to do that, then it's going to keep happening. So you have to be able to be completely calm. What I like to do if a kid says something rude to me is just say, let's I don't want to waste time with this right now, but let's you and I talk after class. And I've had a kid say, why? I didn't think that was disrespectful. And I say, well, that's probably a reason why we need to talk. And I just move on. So one, I called attention to it. You're not getting away with this, but I'm not saying it in that way. Two, the other kids realize that when someone's disrespectful to this guy, he doesn't respond. It's not worth it. I mean, what's the point of being disrespectful if it's not going to get something big happening? And then have them later and say, as you know, the consequence for this is. So, what do you think about that? Why did you say something like that? But I never say that was really hurtful. I just don't think my feelings about that are relevant. I don't want them to believe they have control over my feelings. But you'd have to decide how you want to have that conversation with the student. The big idea here is there is a consequence for it, and I'll deliver the consequence, but it'll be on my schedule, not yours. You don't get to dictate when I teach and when I don't teach, when I handle something, when I don't. I've let you know that we're going to handle this later, and that's what we'll do. Now, I love these videos, and these are the oldest ones of the videos we have. I love this particular one because the teacher, who again is acting, it's the greatest juxtaposition of the first one totally being out of control, and the second one is just ice water in his veins, so cool and calm and collected.
Hey, what is?
I do appreciate the people that are listening. John, I need to see you after I'm done with reading this section. Now, let's get back to what we're reading.
So now to me, that's a teacher who's totally in control. The kids don't wonder, what could we do to blow this up? It doesn't blow up. This teacher's in control of himself. You can't get away with anything. He's still going to talk to you about it, but you're not going to be able to get him going. He's not going to put on a show. He's not going to stop instruction for it. So those are the big four. And clearly, there are other things you might do with each of those kids if you knew those kids and said, there's something I know specifically about this. But I'm kind of trying to lay it out again as high probability given that you don't know a whole lot about this kid. So the average time this happens, this is what I might try. But I might be a lot more specific if I knew one of these kids. Oh, sorry about that. Let's go. Big ideas. One, the calm is where we teach. Escalation is not a time when teaching will work. Watch for trigger and agitation and intervene early with distraction and redirection. Minimize the peak and focus on safety. That's where we want to be. When we get to the point where we have kids coming down, I'm sorry, but this is not. Avoid confrontation. At that de-escalation point, we do not want any confrontation. It's just let them come down. And again, this is where people will say, well, it's not fair. They just get to sit there. But if you go over and do something, it's going to last even longer. So let it come down. And then finally, wait till recovery and start gradually getting them back in and save it until calm when you really talk about the consequences. So are there any questions? We have a few minutes left. Any questions anybody has about these things?
I'm wondering if you could just talk for a minute or two. You've spent a lot of time really emphasizing the need for adult calm, right? If you're gonna handle these situations in ways that are going to de-escalate, are there strategies or tools that you've seen be effective for the adults to help them remain calm in these situations where we're human and it's emotional, and how do you get to that and stay there?
That's a great question. And I feel like, so I came right out of my undergrad. I was 22 and I was working with 54 adjudicated adolescent boys. So I'm not that far out of my adolescence myself. And they would say the most ridiculous insults to me. And I always felt like I've got this great comeback. And it always made it worse because the comeback wasn't what was needed. And I found that I had to kind of teach myself that when kids say and do these things that are escalating and rude and ridiculous, I just taught myself, don't answer for 3 beats. So 1, 2, 3. And that was enough to remind me, don't say something even stupider back to them, which is going to make them say something even stupider back to you. That I had to create this little intervention for myself to not do that. Just, when I'm, again, as an adolescent around your friends, they say something stupid, you say something stupider back. Well, these aren't my friends. These are kids, and they have some issues, and I need to be able to handle myself in a way that helps that issue. So I think you just have to think about it and, set some strategies for yourself for how you can delay or take a beat or a breath before you respond to something.
I have a question in the chat related to that. So when we're working with young children in particular, and we're trying to teach them about how their words can be hurtful to others and their actions can hurt others, they're wondering, do we still not tell them that hurt my feelings when you did whatever action? No, I think it's perfectly okay to say, how would it make you feel if that happened to you? So why would we, but I think it's okay to say that's something hurt my feelings, but I don't think it's okay to let it affect you in the way you do it. Okay, so that was, if you with an older kid, that was a really rude thing you said to me, and I don't need to go into this any further because I'm an adult, I'll get over it. But that was a really rude thing. You can think how you'd feel if someone said that. So how are we going to handle this? How can you make this better? And with little kids, I think it's the same idea, but the language you use is going to have to be a little bit different. So you might have to talk a little bit more about what's it feel like to have your feelings hurt. And so why did you say that? So if you were feeling mad like that again, what's something you could do that would help us talk about this without hurting people's feelings? And again, it's just going to be the language you choose to use based on who the kid is. And so I think that brings up a good issue. I'm not saying you can't ever say to older kids that was offensive or hurtful, etc. I just think you can't let that change the way you respond. Yeah, I'm responding as a professional adult because I'm a professional adult. It might have hurt a lot. I'm still a professional adult. You don't control that. Response. Thank you. If there's any other questions, we do have just a couple of minutes. You can get them in the chat. In the meantime, I will also share my screen with our closing code. Let me get that up for you right now. That is our closing code for the session. Again, if you have a question, we have about 2 more minutes with Dr. Terry Scott. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise today, not only for this session, but for our morning session also. We really appreciate it.
My
and
pleasure.
I hope everyone who attended today was able to get what they needed as well. Just a reminder that if you're not attending tomorrow, if you could please fill out the conference feedback survey under the resources tab today, we would appreciate that. If you are attending tomorrow, you'll have a chance tomorrow to do it as well. And then just to let everybody know that the information booths start at 8:30 until 8:50 tomorrow morning live. And then our sessions will start promptly at 9 o'clock tomorrow. There's a lot of thank yous in the chat. I don't see any additional questions. So thank you very much. All right. Thank you.